people to share their experiences is to engage them in meaningful conversations, ask relevant questions, and get them to talk. This is exactly what I do here on Candid Talk. I fish out individuals with unique stories, ask pertinent questions about their life journey, and allow them to educate, inspire, encourage, or correct with their unique stories. My name is Evelyn Ohiola, and today on Candid Talk, we will be focusing on activism. As we all know that activism has a rich history in our country, Nigeria, and over the years, it has played a significant role in shaping our society and holding government accountable. With activists like Ken Saro-Wiwa, the great Gani Fawehinmi SAN, Margaret Ekpo, Olufunmilayo Ransom Kuti, Fela Kuti, they have been able to change our society in the little way that they can while they were with us. My guest on the show today says activism for him is a calling, not a profession. They say for you to be an activist, you must have passion, empathy, and purpose. My guest, Ayodeji Ologun, says it ticks all boxes. Let's meet him. A man with many hearts, Ayodeji Ologun is a media entrepreneur and life coach with his experience in the media industry spanning over 25 years. As a media practitioner, he has worked with the Osun State Broadcasting Corporation, OSBC, Nigerian Television Authority, NTA Osogbo, African Independent Television, AIT, and was the pioneer bureau chief of Kaftan Television. At a young age, Ologun carved a niche for himself as an activist. He was a former Students' Union Government President of Adeyemi College of Education, now Adeyemi Federal University of Education, a former Assistant Secretary General of the National Association of Nigerian Students. Ologun metamorphosed into a full-blown civil rights activist with active membership of various civil society groups. He is the Executive Director of the Center for Responsive Governance, CRG. He is the spokesperson of the Transparency and Accountability Group, TAG, spokesperson of the Center for Public Accountability, CPA, and spokesperson of the Osun Masterminds, among others. He led the Popular Answers movement in Osun and later served as a member of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry on Police Brutality in the state. Ologun, a public affairs analyst and social commentator of note, is a writer, poet, and prides himself as the voice of reason in the society. It takes particular interest in the documentation of the life and times of great men, and some of such is the record-breaking life documentary of Are Afeba Balola, SAN, King Olufalaye, Chief S.B. Falegan, among several others. He sits as the Executive Director of Ranroy Media and Leadership Institute. He is also the owner of the music record label Ranroy Musics. Ayodeji Ologun, husband and father who prides himself as a responsible family man. All right, welcome on board, Mr. Ayo Ologun. I must say I'm elated to have you right here, especially on the maiden edition of Candid Talk. Welcome on board.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, before we delve into the conversation, I'd like to know what was your background like? What was growing up like for you? Was it rough? Was it smooth? Were you born with a silver spoon, a diamond spoon, a golden spoon, a wooden one, a plastic one, or no spoon at all?
For me, it is no spoon at all.
Oh, really?
Like I've often said, each time I see people that have privileged backgrounds, maybe you're from a rich home or from an average home, or that enjoyed the privileges of childhood, I envy them because they probably had their eggs hatched already. But for some of us, if there's something like not even having hands to eat, not to talk of spoon, that's the kind of background I had. I had a father who was a primary school teacher. I had a mother who sells food items. And I recall that the income of the two of them put together could not even put meals on our table. So we had to augment it with farming. Like where I presently live used to be my father's farmland.
Oh.
Where you call it Bikonle Dada Estate in Oshobo, I remember it used to be our sweet potato farm in those days. Nobody would go and build houses around those areas. That was the kind of background I had, that once you are able to eat in the morning, don't expect food in the afternoon. Whatever you're able to make as sales or as profit in the afternoon and the evening after school is what becomes of your dinner. If you know what it means to hawk, there's virtually nothing I didn't hawk in my young days in Oshobo. And that's why I tell people that, look, there is nowhere I drive to in the city of Oshobo that I've not walked on with my feet. In those days, I sold boiled plantain, boiled maize, boiled groundnut, puff-puff, buns, dry wood. If you know what that is, that much I did, even though my parents gave birth to 10 kids. So you know 10. What that means. Yeah.
And they're all from your mother?
My dad never had a second wife. My dad and mom had 10 kids. I happen to be the last of the 10. Ooh. And if there is anything that I still spoke with my brother who came visiting yesterday, and I said that, look, we didn't inherit anything, so to say. You know, when your father dies and you see clothes in his wardrobe to use, you inherit land, car. There was no inheritance. But there's one thing that none of us as his children can deny: the fact that our father taught us godliness, taught us contentment, and the value of a good name. And that is why today, by the grace of God, we're all doing good. I'm perhaps the least educated of the 10. There's none of us who does not have a PhD. I'm struggling to have mine. So you know what it means to have 10 children and see the 10 of them through school. And I mean quality schools. With due respect, I'm not talking about NCE or OND or whatever. The 10 of us attended the best of schools: University of Ife, University of Ibadan, Federal University of Technology, Akure. I can go on and on. So for me, those experiences of childhood guided, and it's still guiding my life. Because one thing I've always told myself is, at whatever cost, I must beat the pains, I must beat the shackle of poverty. But in an attempt to break the shackle of poverty, I don't want to lose myself in it. I don't want to lose God. I don't want to lose myself. I don't want to lose my integrity and the good name that I inherited from my father. So for me, my background taught me resilience. It taught me hard work. It taught me understanding. And when I see people going through something, I can relate with what they are going through because I've been there. I remember those days, something just came to my mind. In those days, when we wake up in the morning as early as 5, my mom will have woken up. The only thing my mom would do was to prepare soup. When I say soup, don't get carried away thinking it's ofano and ogbono and all of that. If you know what they call orunla, I'm sure you will not know. But orunla is okra. Okay. The bad part of okra, Yorubas will say ilato tiko. You know, is what you now sun dry. You now blend. That's what you call orunla. That's what we had: dry pepper and some red oil too. If you are lucky to have fish in it, thank God for that day. That's what mom will prepare in the morning. And mom will tell, you know, it's an advantage when you even have enough to prepare gari, to prepare eba with. In my days, it is 1 tin per child. So to avoid cheating, we will not make it together. You measure. So my mom will boil water. So when the water boils, you go and take hot water, you measure 1 cup of gari, you make your own eba. So the idea of you cheated me, she cheated me does not arise. And once you take that, you are off to school. So you can imagine that kind of a background. Even when I gained admission and I see children from other homes waste food, because I made names so early in my university days, I have to wait very late in the night to go and pluck water, what do you call it now? Water leaf from the back of the hostel to make soup. And that's not the kind of soup you make in the daytime. So you make it during the night, pretending to be reading. When others have gone to sleep, you quickly prepare that thing, you quickly consume it and watch the pot because you don't want your roommate waking up to see. So that's the kind of background I had. But in all of this, each time I remember my dad, I remember him for the inheritance of a good name. There's nowhere I go to, I mention his name, and people don't say, oh, that righteous man. And the father, he taught us resilience, he taught us hard work, understanding, empathy, and above all, godliness.
All right.
That's the kind of background I had.
That was quite an interesting background, I should say. But then I'm curious, was there a time you wondered or even questioned your dad why he had to give birth to 10 children when he didn't have the means or the resources to cater for them? Were you that inquisitive to know? Was there any time you asked him?
Of course, I was a very inquisitive person, so you would not have expected less that I would not have asked my dad.
All
and
right.
two things. Number one, giving birth to a lot of children was fashionable at that time. Unlike now, you want to give birth to one or two and you're fine. For them, in those days, the more the merrier. Giving birth to plenty of children was very fashionable. So I understand where it was coming from. But particularly, my dad had that much number of children for two major factors. Number one, he gave birth to a lot of girls at the beginning. He had 5 girls.
Okay.
So each time my mom gets pregnant, it is with the hope that it will be a boy. And so they continued counting until the 6th. The 6th again happened to be a girl.
Wow.
Until she had the 7th. The 7th happened to be a boy. Luckily at the 7th, he had a boy. And he feels, oh, if I had a boy at the 7th, let me try again. Maybe I might be lucky. Then he had the 8th, who happened to be a twin boys.
Wow.
And he wanted to put a stop.
So you were the full stop.
I was the full stop. Unfortunately for him, I also came as a twin. So we ended up making, so that was one of the things responsible for that huge number.
I had no idea that you're a twin.
Yeah, I was born a twin. My mom had 3 sets of twins. That's another factor that contributed to us being 10.
Wow.
My mom had twins 3 times.
Wow.
Our first child was a twin, girls. Then the 7th kids were twin boys. The 2 of them are complete. One is a medical doctor, one is an engineer.
Wow.
Then he had me, myself as Taiwo, a boy, my twin sister, late now though, a girl. So that was what is responsible for my dad having so much children.
I'm so sorry for the demise of your twin sister.
Thank you.
I know you said that it's fashionable for, men back then to have so many kids, and it's also rife back then for women to be victimized for not giving birth to sons. You mentioned that your mom was looking for a male child. Your mom and your dad, they were looking for a male child. That was why they had to keep giving birth until they started having male children. But you would also agree with me that what was also fashionable at the time was, women being victimized for giving birth to female children. And you see the men going ahead to marry more wives just because they are looking for sons. Was that a thing with your mom? Was there any time she was victimized for giving birth to female children?
Well, my family, my parents particularly, were different. Okay. And that's why I keep praising my late dad. He was different from his kind. Number one, he knew God. And when I say knew God, I'm not talking about being religious. Okay. My dad had an encounter with God. So things that other men do and they get away with and nobody talks about it is fashionable, so to say, were not his things. So my mom was really under no pressure for having girls. No. Okay. And that is why, unlike in their days while parents hardly train female children, all my elder sisters are doing very well. They were well trained. So it wasn't a question of, why are you giving back to girls? Until you give me a boy, I will not send girls to school. No. All of my older sisters are master degree holders, nurses, doctors, and they are doing pretty good. So that's to tell you that the number of children that my mom had was more of my mom's choice, because I recall my dad telling me that I wasn't supposed to be part of the kids. When my mom got pregnant with me, my dad was like, woman, what are you looking for? I have 3 kids, boys already. I have 7 girls. Why do we need another child? You are pregnant again. And he was tending towards possible evacuation of the pregnancy. My mom said no, that if God has taken care of the previous 9, God will take care of this. So it was more of a shock when I also came as a twin. So my dad was like, Shotin in Yoruba parlance. Look, what you were looking for, you found it. Now you're giving birth to another set of twins. So instead of us being 9, we ended up being 11. Until we lost my twin sister, and then we became 10. So my dad was not under any societal pressure or ego, as it was fond of their time, to have my mom give birth to a male child. It was actually the choice of my mom wanting to have a male child. It was more like that.
Okay, so would you say it was your background that pushed you into activism? I would really like to know, because I know you are a member of quite a number of civil society organizations, and for most of these organizations, you are like their spokesperson. So I'd like to know, how did you venture into activism? For you, was it by chance, or it was a deliberate move, like, I want to be involved in this?
Well, it's both a choice, and I would, without sounding too religious, I'll call it a calling. Because I recall that when I was pretty young, and like I told you, with the kind of background I had, my older ones were in the university. At the time I gained admission, we were 5 in different universities. And of course, my dad couldn't bear the burden. So we were thrown between the choice of 1 or 2 dropping out of school to get work and finance the others. And everybody thought, oh, Ayo will not want to drop, because I had it so fast. By 14, I finished secondary school. By 15, I gained admission. So everybody felt, oh, we should allow that boy be at the space. I dropped out. And that's why I said I used to call myself an unmade lawyer. I dropped out as a law student from the University of Ibadan, just to work and support my other siblings that were in school. So that life of sacrifice was something that I grew up to have as part of me. Then in the course of growing up, I also discovered that perhaps one thing that I find very easy is supporting others. I most of the time find myself working at the background to have other people have sources. I wait till when it is my turn, or when people get to discover me. So that life of sacrifice has been there. So that's why I said it's more of a calling. But in terms of choice, activism wasn't supposed to be something for me. In fact, a lot of people still ask me why I chose activism above politics. Because in my growing up years, I've had the opportunity of leading several organizations that ordinarily should have thrown me into the waters of politics. In my undergraduate days, I served as class rep, I served as course coordinator, then I moved on to become the pastor of my fellowship, then in school, RCF. From being that, I became the secretary of the student union government of my school. From being secretary of the student union government of the school, I became the president of the student union. So people were naturally expecting that I would transit from being a unionist to a full-blown politician. But immediately I dropped my toga as the president of the student union, there was this kind of a switch for me. Instead of politics, I switched to activism, because I felt there was a gap. We were not having so much people speaking for others. By that time, we've lost the grandfather in me. The few we had were the likes, the duo of Odumakin, the wife and the husband, Femi Falana, Showore, who happened to be a senior colleague, and all of that. So I felt that, look, I can do this. And I found myself in that line by choice. But like I've often said, I am not a career activist, because that's one of the problems we have in activism, not only in Nigeria, but around the world. People take activism as a career. Activism is not supposed to be a career, just like lawmaking. It's supposed to be something that you do as a matter of choice. So for me, I do other things. Activism comes to me naturally. So when people come to even say, oh, do this for us, we'll pay you this, if it is not based on conviction, I would rather excuse myself, because that is not my lifeline. That's not what I hit with. I have a job, I have a career, which I'm still pursuing very rigorously. So for me, activism is something that comes easy. Speaking for others comes easy. And like you said, most of the organizations I belong to, I ended up being their spokesperson. Maybe because of my background, and especially my choice of career. I'm into broadcasting, so naturally I talk for a living. So when I find myself as members of organizations that are civil society based, something happens that I get thrown up as their spokesperson. And as a last count, I think I speak for about 12 organizations, 12 civil society organizations. 12.
Wow. All right. So you mentioned that you're not a career activist. Well, we know that there are some people that are self-acclaimed activists.
Career activists.
Okay, your words, career activists. But then what qualifies someone to be an activist? Can I just wake up one morning and say, I want to start speaking for people, I want to be the voice of the oppressed and all of that? What actually qualifies one to be called an activist?
For me, there are 3 things. Number 1 is the passion. if you are not passionate about the plight of others, if you are not passionate about what other people are going through, and they cannot speak for themselves, or perhaps you've been through what they've been through, you've overcome that stage. If you don't have the passion and you choose activism, perhaps such a person might not succeed with it. That's number one. So to be an activist, you must be passionate about what others are going through and willing to sacrifice yourself to speak for them so that their voice can be heard and call attention to what they are going through. Number two is experience. Like I've often said, activism is more like learning a trade. You must have a leader. In my case, the late Yinka Odumakin, it was my leader. When he eventually left the scene, I pitched my tent with the wife, Dr. Joe Odumakin. And of course, if you've been following a lot of my activities, you always see me around her for events and all of that. That is because there are basic things that you don't learn except by experience. There are things that you cannot afford to say as an activist, but you are not likely to know except you are following in the footsteps of someone. For example, there are things you don't just say. There are things that there are ways to say them. And you cannot know all of that by just waking up on any side of your bed. It's about following a leader and watching that person do it again and again. Number two, I said activism is about learning a trade because you need contact. No activists make waves without the media. So if you are such a person that do not have contact in the media, even when you say things, nobody to amplify them for you. So having contact in the media, having a relationship with the media is one thing that you need to learn as an activist, or else you make noise and people don't hear you. Number three is you also need contact within the legal frameworks. Because as an activist, you cannot just be speaking. You must be speaking to, you are expected to be speaking to facts. So for example, if you are not a reader, I remember in those days when we were growing up as an activist and we would travel overnight to Lagos to go and take posters and bills that DSS and police must not find with you. We'll travel through the night to Ife, to Akure, to Ibadan. You need to learn how to conceal those things so that police don't check on you and find it. What the police are actually looking for is what they find in your possession. So if you don't learn how to travel concealing protest materials, for example, or you are not a reader, you don't read, you don't know what the Constitution is saying, you don't know what the new policy of government is, and you just go on radio and TV to talk, you make a mess of yourself. So I remember in those days growing up in one of the organizations I belonged to, the CDA Child Day, when we go for meetings, they will give us a list of books. Some of them 600, 700 pages. They might give us 2 or 3. And you must read those 3 books before the next meeting. And then they put you in front of members of the group to be telling them what you've read in the book. They might say, oh, in chapter, page, this was said, who said it to who, and all of that. So all of that helps you to build yourself. So that's why I said, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of activism thriving in Nigeria again. What you have these days are just people who believe that, oh, you can make money being an activist. Activism can make you popular. Oh, activism can make you dreaded. But then, we have had activists who have also landed themselves in trouble by not knowing when to speak and when not to speak. So these 3 things are key for someone who wants to be an activist, or else it will just be there for being their sake.
It just took the question out of my mouth. I was just about to ask about if you think activism is thriving in Nigeria. All right, so I know you have mentioned that 3 things make an activist. That's passion, the experience, and contacts. Talk about media and legal contacts. Yeah, that's so good. But then I'll still ask that question. Do you think activism is thriving in Nigeria? I mean, when I mean thrive, I mean producing the result it's supposed to produce. And because some people are of the opinion that activism in Nigeria is dead. In fact, they call you people cashivists. They say it's all about the money. Instead of activists, they say you guys are cashivists. It's all about the money. That's why you try to antagonize the government so that you can be probably bribed or something.
Well, I hear that a lot and I laugh because people say things the way it appears to them. I've had to be locked up, if I'm not mistaken, as at the last count, I've been a guest of about 3 prisons, and maybe about 20 police station cells and what have you.
Wow.
So for someone, and that mine is minor. For the Odumakins, they met in prison.
I think I have.
The two of them met in prison, they got married in
yes.
prison. The likes of Gadefawa and me have lost count of the number of prisons. So mine is still minute. So for someone who have my kind of background, to be called a cash activist is funny. Not because the cash don't come. I must say that particularly. There have been times that people have offered to take words out of your mouth by offering money. And if you are cash activist, as they said, you are likely to take such money and keep quiet. Most of the time, taking such money ends up being a bait. So, and that's why I talk about understanding. If you have not been through a leader that you've seen or learned such actions from, you will not understand when and how to speak, who to speak to, and when not to be found at all. What do I mean? Look, for those who said activism is dead, I can tell you for a fact that were it not for genuine activism, this country will have gone far, far, far behind what it is now. Look, there's nothing you hold against Showore. He might have his excesses, but then, for himself, the Jadeyanju, and a number of us, perhaps the government will have gotten away with a lot of things they do, if not for what people call noise that we make. But we live in a situation, or we live in a country where people don't give you accolade for what you do. People benefit from your actions, but they decide to look the other way. I've lost count of interventions that I've had to make as an activist against government or against government policies that have had to be reversed. Issues of accountability and transparency, they are countless. That until some of us speak out, that the government believes, oh, even when they used to say it among themselves when they want to take decisions, oh, we better be careful about this kind of decision, because once this person or this organization get rid of this information, we are done for. That helps to check and balance those in government. And instead of people to be given the right accolade that they deserve for making all of those happen, what they tell you is, oh, you are making too much noise, or you don't like government, you are catchifist. I'm not saying there are some that do activism for the money. For example, I've seen situations whereby somebody will approach me, oh, I'm being witch-hunted by the EFCC. What they are saying, I stole, I didn't steal it. I just need you and your guys to arrange a press conference and tell the EFCC to stay off me. Why did the person come if the person does not know that our words can't? Why do such people come to us if they don't know that the likes of ICPC and EFCC fears what we say?
So are you saying there are some of
us that will jump at such an offer?
Yeah.
Collect 2 million, 3 million, organize press conference to the advantage of politicians. You can call all of those cachifists. But I've seen situations whereby I've been involved in a project or an intervention, and the person affected will say, oh, let me offer you 10 million so that you can back down. I'll give you an instance. Sometimes ago, there was a very huge issue at the Ministry of Interior, particularly what do you call it, the Immigration Service. Those were in the latter days of President Muhammadu Buhari. We had a man called something Jere. He was the head of Immigration Service. The man had exhausted his 35 years in office. President Muhammadu Buhari, for reasons best known to him, reappointed the man after exhausting his years in the civil service to continue as the boss of the Immigration Service. In the first instance, it was 6 months. He gave him another 6 months and spent a year. One way or the other, I got involved, wrote to the ICPC, wrote to the FCC, wrote to the head of Civil Service of the Federation, wrote to the presidency, addressed press conference that, look, you cannot be making people retrogressive. In the course of the 1 year that the man has stayed in office, albeit illegally, this was a man that stopped wearing immigration uniform because he has retired.
Yes.
So you can't be wearing uniform as a retired officer. So you are a civilian heading a paramilitary organization. And that 1 year, perhaps about 2 others who could have been head of the immigration have been denied that opportunity. They've retired. So the old noise became so much. At the point in time, it became a blackmail. Oh, it's because the next person in rank is a Yoruba woman. That's why you are agitating. You want your person to be there. Look, and I'm telling you today, the woman that eventually benefited from the struggle, who has just exited, I think about 2 weeks ago, I've never set my eyes on her. We've never talked on phone. So it was not an agitation born out of somebody benefiting from it. I did all that, addressed press conference, led the protest to the immigration headquarters, led a protest to the presidency, did press conferences, a lot of letters and what have you. Eventually, the man was relieved of his office. But I think a week or thereabout before he was relieved from office, I got calls, strange numbers, making offers. Oh, can you come to Abuja? We'll pay for your flight. So hotel has been arranged for you. Let's come and talk. Let's have an understanding. Someone even says, send your account number. All we need you to do is just to keep quiet. All the ones you've done, we are not asking you to retrieve them, but just stop talking. We offer you 10 million, send your account number and all of that. And I must tell you, funny enough, it was one of the moments of my needs. So if you are not grounded, if you are not resolute, you are likely going to say, oh, after all, nobody sent me this message. I'm not doing this because somebody is paying me. So if I have an offer, some money I could use to solve my problem, why not? After all, the person I'm even making noise for, I don't know her. I refused this offer. It's not as if it was easy, but I refused that offer a week or two after the president removed Jere and appointed another person. Oh, you will have expected that. Oh, one will have said, oh, now it is time for me to benefit from my struggle. I never went back there. Just like I told you, I never met the woman. She's still alive. She's from Ileluju in those states. I've never met her. I've never spoken to her, either on phone or physically. So for me, it was a selfless thing. But if it had been a catchivist, that would have been the agenda. Make some noise, trouble the waters, let the offers come, grab the offer, and move on. So when that happens, people fail to understand that even though there are people that do that for a living, there are some of us who do it for principle. And that's why you see some activists make so much money. And the rest who are not so rich, people will be like, what is wrong with this one? What your mate is doing and they are building us in Abuja, you are here in Oshobo making noise, nobody is even hearing you. It is about purpose. It is about understanding why you do the things you do. So like I've said, there's a difference between catchifists and activists. And to say that activism is dead in Nigeria will be an understatement, because activists, genuine activists in Nigeria, put the government on their toes and are able to achieve as much as we have achieved in recent times.
Have you ever gotten death threats before?
Severally. Not even death threats, attempts on my life. As at the last count, my life has been attempted about 7 times for nothing but activism. So much that my family have had to ask questions. Why are you putting us in danger for what people are not even applauding you for? You know this feeling of when people meet your brothers, sisters, or your kids in the street and they say, oh, your father is a troubler of government, or your father is this, your brother is that. So your kids get bullied for their father being... A number of times. I'll give you an instance. My first son plays basketball. At a point, he was the captain of the under 13 basketball team for Osun State. One of such times, I had a running battle with the former government in the state, and it was coming from my house is not so far from the stadium where he does his trainings and whatever. So he was coming back from training with a number of his friends, and 3 people on a motorbike waylaid them. And the next thing is, which one of you is Ologun? Which one of you is Ologun?